Welcome this afternoon. This is the first segment of the Fortogov. It's a community information program sponsored by the City of Fort Oglethorpe. My name is Ron Goulart. I'm the City Manager of the City of Fort Oglethorpe, and today we're honored to have some representatives here to talk to us about water leaks. We have two representatives from Tennessee American Water Company, and we have our own water and sewer director. Let me introduce the representatives from the Tennessee American Water Company. We have Daphne Kirksey, who's seated here to my right. We have Kevin Rogers, who's seated in the center. And we have Phil Parker, who's director of our water and sewer department here at the city. First of all, Daphne, if you would you explain to the audience what you do for Tennessee American?
Sure. I'm the External Affairs Manager for Tennessee American Water, so I basically do the public relations and manage the community partnerships. And I'm glad that y'all are hosting us today. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Rogers, would you explain to the audience what you do for Tennessee American?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I'm the Operations Manager, meaning that I have responsibility for the treatment facility for the treatment of our water, as well as the customer service side that reads meters and provides customer service for orders and questions that customers might have, as well as the distribution system where we maintain our system to repair leaks and install new services and those types of things.
Okay. And Phil Parker, of course, is employed by the city. If you would, Phil, please tell the audience what your job description is and responsibilities here.
Well, I'm responsible for the operation and maintenance of the city's water and sewer system. We maintain a distribution system. We purchase all of our water from Tennessee American. In addition to operating the water distribution system, we maintain a sanitary sewer collection system, also within the city limits and western portion of the county. Pretty much many of the same things that Tennessee American operators do. We operate the distribution system, we read meters, we fix leaks, we handle customer complaints, all those sort of things.
I certainly appreciate Tennessee American coming here today because, you know, in my job, I usually receive calls daily about people complaining about their water bill, that they could not have used that much water. So I think it's very important that you can inform the public about what to look for as far as household water leaks. And if you would, could you tell us a few things that the public
Absolutely.
might be?
Well, people are often surprised that they could be using that much water, and you know, it's important to detect leaks because not only is it good for your water bill, but it's also good for the environment. And one of the biggest culprits is actually the toilet. People don't realize that, and I have some facts here. The average household leak can add up to more than 10,000 gallons of water wasted every year. That would equal to 278 loads of laundry. A leaky faucet dripping at a rate of 1 drip per second could waste 3,000 gallons of water. And if you think about a gallon of milk, you have a visual of how much that would be. And as I mentioned, the most common culprit is the leaky toilet. And a leaky toilet could waste as much as 100 gallons of water a week. So if you have a leaky toilet and it's pretty, you don't really see it, you might hear it running, you could really run up your water bill easily.
Kevin, what are some of the things perhaps a homeowner might be on the lookout for? I know that you said you could hear, if you hear the water come on. Is there any other signs?
Sure. If you hear at night, if you're sitting around and you just hear the commode starting to run, you've probably got a small leak, and it's draining that tank enough that over time it has to refill. You can look for leaks around appliances, leaks around faucets. You know, just a dripping, a slow drip, just a drip a second is several thousand gallons of water a year. And people really don't understand exactly how much water you could use. If you had a leak in a service line under your house, and it was leaking like a gallon a minute, that could be 43,000 gallons in a 1 month billing period. And a lot of times people will underestimate how big of an impact that leaks can have. You can also go to the meter pit, and on the meter there's a little red triangle. That if that triangle is moving, that water's moving through the system. So you can check. One of the easy ways to check is to go turn everything off in your house that's using water, let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes and get settled, and go look in your meter lid and look at that little triangle on the dial, and if it's moving, that means there's water moving through and there's a leak somewhere. Another thing you can do is to put some, go into the commode and take the lid off the back and put we have some colored tablets that are available, a leak detection kit, or you can put a couple drops of, Daphne has one of those. You can put a couple drops of food coloring, and do not flush the toilet, just let it set and come back in about 15 or 20 minutes. And if you see the food coloring down in the bowl, then you know that water's seeping through. And a lot of times that's the flap on the inside the tank that seals. That can be deteriorated, it can be misaligned, and it can cause the problem. And so if you do use food coloring, please do flush the commode after you put it in there, otherwise you don't want it to sit and stain the bowl.
Let me ask you this. For example, you know, you have a lot of homeowners who aren't familiar with plumbing, but for example, if I do hear my commode, you know, kick on periodically through the night or during the day, what should the homeowner do in that case? Well,
if you have a handyman, you can go look and see that, and a lot of times that flapper needs to be replaced or realigned. Call a plumber and have them come and take a look. If it's running continuously, there's a disconnect knob down there, generally at the baseboard, that can be turned to shut that off until it can be repaired and not waste water while you're waiting on the repair.
Okay. These repair kits for commodes, are they things that the homeowner could perhaps go purchase locally at a hardware store? Yeah,
so they're available at all the home improvement stores, the Lowe's, Home Depots, plumbing stores. You know, they're readily available and are not that difficult to install, but they do need to really be aligned correctly, because just a small gap will let a significant amount of water through.
Okay. Phil, you want to enlighten the audience on some of the complaints that you've had about water leaks in the home?
Well, a lot of the complaints that we've got is that people don't understand how they could have used that much water. And as Kevin had said, you know, it doesn't take very much of a leak to create a high water bill. And there is a website, American Water Works Association has a website. It's awwa.org. And you can go to that website and click on a link. It's called Resources and Tools, and there's a tab for public information. And they have a leak calculator on their website, where if you have a faucet that's dripping so many drops a second, you can put those drops in and it'll calculate how many gallons that you're losing. And they also have, if it's a more of a steady leak, how many seconds it takes to fill up. I believe it's an 8-ounce glass, and that'll tell you how many gallons you're losing. And it would surprise you just how much or how insignificant a leak may look. But some of the complaints that we do get are of that nature, and one of the types of meters that we've started using is a data logger meter, and that records the water usage. Anytime the water goes through the meter, it records the time and date. And we've been able to answer a lot of questions with residents who really didn't understand why. And most of them don't have a problem with it if they know it's theirs. But the data logger type meters have resolved a lot of those issues by being able to show the homeowner that, you know, they're using water at 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning when, you know, everybody's in bed. So that has gone a long way to help.
You know, I know not only does it impact their water bill, but there's sewer charges also. Everything that goes through the water meter,
Right.
you pretty much are going to be paying, you know, to treat that fresh water.
Right. Now, if we know
pay a
there's
sewer bill.
right, if we know there's been a leak and it's been outside on the ground,
Yeah.
where the water has run off on the ground and in the ditch, we will adjust. We will work with the homeowner and adjust the sewer. If a leak goes through the toilet, of course, that's going into the sewer and we can't adjust. You know, we can't do anything for that.
And one thing is that if you have a major leak in your house, you should know where your shut-off valve is for the water source in your home.
Okay.
So-
And the shut-off valves, where are they typically located as far as when it comes into the house?
Well, I know there's, like Kevin mentioned, there's one for the toilet, so if you had like specifically for toilet, and then sometimes there's some under the sinks if you're working on a leak related to a sink, and then for the general house, is it usually in the basement?
Typically, it'll be in the basement or around, maybe at the exterior of the house, the foundation. There's a location. Some of the older homes would have them in a crawl space or something like that, but most probably they're going to be around somewhere in a room, a utility room, where the water enters the house for the first time.
And I believe, like at my house, when you open the kitchen sink cabinets underneath the sink, you can open it and there's two little valves on each water supply, and you can just turn them off there. So,
Right.
right. So it's at the beginning of the show, you alluded to a package, and I think that Tennessee American is going to furnish
Yes.
the city of Fort
That's right.
Oglethorpe with these packages for people to
Right.
come to City Hall, get the package.
That's
and
right.
Would
It's
you
this
explain that?
water leak detection kit,
Mhm.
and it goes over a lot of the information we've been talking about. It comes with the colored tablets that you can put in your water tank, your toilet tank, and it talks about the different types of leaks, like any appliance that uses water. You know, that's a potential source of a leak. Now, usually with something like that, you'll see the water, you know, a pool around. Like if it's an ice maker, for example, you would usually see it down by the bottom of the refrigerator or ice maker. One of the things with like an outdoor underground sprinkler system, irrigation system, like if you notice a real wet spot in your yard, that might be a leak that your irrigation system is leaking.
And I've encouraged people with we've had a very cold winter, unusually cold. And as people go this spring to turn on their sprinkler system, to make sure to have that checked and make sure that they don't have a frozen and burst pipe there, because it can create a very large bill very quickly. So make sure folks test that before they just turn it on and leave.
For the outdoor.
For the outdoor, yes.
Yeah, and Kevin brings up a good point with the like polar vortex we had this past winter. If you think if your pipes are frozen, should do that main shut off first before you start thawing the pipes, or before they do thaw, in case you do have any cracks in the pipes.
Yes, okay. Phil, I believe you brought a couple of the meters that we currently use. Could you explain those?
Sure. This is the direct read water meter. This is just a basic water meter that we use. This little red triangle, which Kevin was referring to earlier, where if you've got all the water off in your house, and if this little red triangle is turning, then water's going through the meter. The faster the little red triangle turns, the higher the volume of water going through the meter. And so that's something to look for on these standard type water meter. Is if you suspect a leak and you know everything's off in the house, and if that little triangle's turning, then you've got a leak somewhere. And this is just a standard water meter that we use. We're transitioning away from these type of meters to this type of meter, which is the Neptune T10 900 data logger, and it doesn't have the triangle, but it does have on here, and the resident homeowner could see it by lifting the lid. It would show flow. It will state flow, and it'll show a current flow rate. If there's nothing occurring, it'll be 0. If you've got water going through the system, then it'll show how many gallons a minute is actually going through. This is the data logger meter. This is where it's right here, where this showed all the zeros just a second ago, because there is no water going through. And this is the E-coder meter that records. It checks the reading every 15 minutes. And if there's usage, then it notes it. And I don't remember the ratio, but once it determines that there's so much usage in a 24-hour period, it will give a leak indication. And then we can download the information, and we can print a scale, print a graph, and just a chart, and it'll show the gallons that went through the meter, the time of day it went through the meter, and if somebody's got water going through the meter at 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the morning when everybody's supposed to be in bed, that's a good indication that there's a leak. We had a resident with a really high water bill, and he didn't understand why the bill was high. And we asked him if he had a sprinkler system, and he said he did, but he had it turned off, or it was turned off. Well, when we downloaded the data, the sprinkler system was operating between 1:30 and 3:30 in the morning. He was not aware of this. But when we downloaded the data, you could show every morning, it's consistent as clockwork, 1:30 to 3:30 every morning, water going through his meter. And he understood it then, and he corrected it. Whatever didn't turn off, didn't turn off. But so it's
a helpful tool.
It is a helpful tool, and it'll store the data for like 3 months, and then so we can go back after a little bit. And we've had a lot of people that just they didn't know they had a leak, and we were able to kind of pinpoint things using this type of a meter.
What is the I know you explained that, but the advantage of that meter over the old traditional meter as far as the reading of it?
Well, this is a radio read meter.
Okay.
This is an antenna port. Of course, I don't have the antenna with me, but we read this meter by radio. Our readers don't lay eyes on it. It sends a radio signal to our handheld receiver, and we just collect the data by radio, and so there's not any human error in reading. If the radio fails, we get a 0, and then we know when we do an exception report. After we read meters, we print an exception report. So when we get a 0 on the exception report where we had a radio meter, we know we've got a radio not transmitting, and so we go back and investigate if the antennas come off, or the battery's dead, or it's just quit. But that's what we use, and it's also, you can bring up the address and you can key in the readings for the standard meters, but then it's also a radio receiver. And so this is the meter we're slowly over time transitioning over to. So we'll be able to download the data as need be. The radios last, the batteries last. The batteries on this one is actually replaceable, but we've had real good service with them.
And what is the cost of that new technology?
These meters run us about $170 a piece.
One of the advantages also with those meters is it's a safer way to read. So if you have, like in this winter when we had the difficult winter and there was ice on the sidewalks and the streets, once the streets cleared up, our folks could still go out and read meters that had radio reads, and they would have to worry about reducing the exposure to walk on the sidewalks and slip and fall. They could still read the meters from their truck and read and perform their job safer and help the cost for the city and the us as Tennessee American with our employees. It helped keep our folks safe and help reduce our cost and reduce injuries.
As many of these as we have been able to, we've installed along Highway 2, Lafayette Road, Cross Street, some of our busier roadways to minimize our crews being out of the vehicles on that road. They can ride down the road with that receiver and pick up a signal from a quarter-mile away. It sends a good signal if it's mostly line of sight. If it's in behind a building, you may have to drive around to behind the building, but still you don't have to get out of the vehicle, you don't have to get out on the side of the highways or on the busy streets. It's much safer.
Is it kind of a trend in the industry?
Pretty much.
That
There's the supplier we deal with, Neptune makes 3. They make the standard direct read meter. They make just a radio read meter and the data logger. And our supplier pretty much has stopped even carrying the standard radio because these are not that much more. These are only about $10 more to get all the added technology. So that's the ones that we've transitioned in over to.
You know, I didn't know this until I started working with the city and being involved with the water department. But it's my understanding that the older the meter is, the less likely that it's going to read accurately. And
That's
actually
correct.
it will not record as much water as going through the meter.
The older the meters,
Yeah.
they slow down and they quit reading flows, and then you know they'll get to the point where they won't pick up any low flow.
Yeah.
And if you're taking a shower or washing clothes, you don't need to pick it up a high flow. But some places, if you just rinse your hands for a second, it may not even pick up that flow.
Yeah.
But no, they don't speed up when they get older. They slow down.
I know that it's it's beginning to be warm weather, but Daphne, can you give the audience some tips on perhaps what they should do when they know we're going to have cold weather or freezing
Sure.
weather?
Well, you can drip your faucet, and I know we were talking about a drip adding up, but if that's just for a night or two compared to the cost of a repair, that would be a better savings. You can also open up the cabinets where the pipes would be underneath to expose it to a little bit warmer air. Make sure you've shut off your water for outside spigots, or put on one of those bibs on there. So those are some of the things that you can do to help protect yourself.
Is there anything else that you can think of, Kevin, perhaps they should do in
Sure.
cold weather?
Sure. If you come across with, you need to seal any cracks around the in the basement or around the crawl space, garage doors, to prevent cold air from coming in the house or in the crawl space. That'll help protect the pipes. If you do come across a frozen pipe, be sure to turn the water off, and if you want to thaw it yourself, open the faucet closest to the frozen point, and if you start thawing the pipe at the section that's frozen closest to the faucet, because as you thaw the pipe, the water inside can heat up, maybe turn to steam, and it needs to be able to escape out that faucet. If you start warming it up in the middle of the thaw, of the frozen part, it can expand and get trapped there and expand and actually burst the pipes. But be very careful whenever folks are thawing pipes. Do not use open flames to the risk of fire. Many people can use a hair dryer. You just got to be careful that it's safe and not know there's no water around that we're using that electricity. But a hair dryer is in a dry environment is a good safe way to thaw. And some people also can use hot water. It's a little messier, but you can wrap a towel around the pipes and then put hot water on it, and that towel will hold that hot water up against it and thaw it out. But it is going to make a mess as it drips and stuff. But there's please be careful if you're thawing, because open flames can create a fire. Electric hair dryers can create electrical shock if the floor is damp or some things.
Let me ask you this. If you allowed or turned the faucet on so it would drip, should you do the hot and the cold? And if so, why would you do both as opposed to one?
Yeah, you need to do both because they can both have a different supply line coming in, and you can have a hot water line and a cold water line on an exterior wall coming into the kitchen and coming up to the sink. So you need to either let both drip, or if you have a single device valve, just make sure it's in the center so it's pulling a little bit of hot and cold at the same time to keep the pipes, the hot and the cold pipes, moving so they don't freeze.
That was a really good point. I didn't know that. Learned something new today.
Let me ask you this. Let's suppose that you've got someone in the audience that they've checked their commode, they've checked all their faucets, and but yet they perhaps go outside, look at their meter, and the usage indicator, that little red dial, is still spinning. What would you recommend that the homeowner do at that point in time?
Well, they can. There could be a leak between the meter and the house in the service line,
Okay.
and they can walk around. Generally, it's typically a straight line between the meter box to the house,
Yes, sir.
and they can just walk that section of the yard and look for any spots that may be softer than the other area around it, or if there's water standing, and you can have a leak in the service line there. And at that point, you need to call a plumber or someone to come and check and replace and repair that line.
Okay.
You could also have outside faucets. You know, if you have an outside water faucet for your water hose and things, you could have a leak around one of those. It wouldn't necessarily be just a field service line, but you could have a leak at a faucet. If you have an outbuilding with a water supply, be sure to check it as well.
Okay. Now, we talked about the toilet tank repairs. What about someone who's got a faucet that just drips, and you see people just turn and turn and turn? What is typically involved in repairing that leak?
Well, typically, if you have the old dual, or the older model, or the dual handles, typically it is a gasket in there. They can remove that, turn the water off underneath the sink, and remove that the handle, and there's typically a little gasket that can be put in there and replaced and prevent that from dripping.
What about, we haven't talked about pressure reducer valves and pop-off valves on hot water heaters. What purpose do they serve as it relates to water?
Right. Well, the water system has different pressures, and here in the Chattanooga and the North Georgia, there's not many flat areas, and as you go up and down hills and over hills, it requires more pressure to go up the hill and down, and so in some areas there may be higher pressure in the water mains than some maybe in the valleys, because it takes more pressure inside the pipe to get it up the hill. And when you get up there, sometimes some pressures are enough that there needs to be a pressure reduction valve at the residence to prevent damaging, to reducing that pressure coming into the residence or the business, so that you don't damage the appliances or the faucets and those kinds of things. And sometimes those can get clogged up. It's sometimes when people have a problem with they've lost pressure at their house, and it's not got the flow they need. Sometimes that PRV valve can be have some kind of corrosion or something in there that's plugged that up and restricting that flow. And they would, at that point, you need to call a plumber to come and replace that or clear it out.
Okay. Now, we've talked about water leaks. Can we perhaps discuss about conserving water? What can an average homeowner do perhaps to conserve water usage?
You can buy special shower heads that are water reducers. They use less water. A lot of the appliances now have less water uses, like the front-loading washing machines, for example.
And as you look nationwide, across the nation, the U.S. is using about 1.5% less water per year for each residence, and a lot of that is to the people are more conscious of the need to conserve, and water is so precious. We're very blessed here in the Tennessee Valley to have the Tennessee River. It's the 5th largest river in the U.S. by volume. But at the same time, we can't take that for granted and need to be responsible and use it and use the water wisely. You can do the low flows. You can also, as she mentioned, the different appliances and those kinds of things. If you're watering a garden or a lawn, you can space that out and have shorter periods of water usage over a longer stretch of days, so that you're not using quite as much and still getting what you need.
Or simple things like turn off the water while you're brushing your teeth. I'm always getting after my kids about that. Or while you're shaving, you know, don't just have the water running.
Well, most of the new codes dictate in the new codes that you use water conservation fixtures.
Right.
The newer toilets that are like 1.7 gallons a flush, and the faucets in the kitchen and the bathrooms are water conservation type things now, and most of that's by code anymore because water has gotten, and particularly in Georgia, and not in our area so much, but down in Atlanta and South Georgia, water had got so precious with the droughts that we had a few years ago that this has become a big code item as to water conservation appliances and fixtures.
You know, that reminds me, that's one of the reasons I had to buy a new washing machine, unfortunately, and the difference between the front end loader and just the standard washing machine, the reason I went with the front, it uses 15 gallons of water, whereas the traditional washing machine was using 45.
Right.
So that's the reason
That's
I
huge
conservation,
savings.
right. So, Phil, if you would tell the audience some of the, we've talked about homeowners' leaks and water leaks on their side. What about leaks in the street and, you know, before it gets to the homeowner? What has the city done in the past few years to address those issues?
Well, one of the areas that we've had most of our water leaks was in the old part of town, which was here when Fort Oglethorpe was home of the cavalry. And we went in and we replaced a bunch of the old water lines with new water lines, and to alleviate the rash of leaks that we're having in those areas. We are looking at doing another project to accomplish the same thing, even though the water system isn't as old, but in the Cross Street, Edgewood, Pinewood area, we're looking at doing a water project there to upgrade the water system and add another connection with Tennessee American to provide a better water service on that north side of town. We have started by Georgia mandated a water audit, and we have to submit a report to the state of Georgia every March, and that gauges our own conservation efforts in the city as far as how we are testing meters and how we are maintaining the system as far as the quickness of response to leaks and this sort of thing, is for keeping, you know, leaking fire hydrants. Fire hydrants are a source of leaks because they're you know, they're a necessary evil as it is. I mean, we have to have them, but they are a source of leaks that we have to address. And we do have leaks, and you know, the residents will see markings on the road. And that's where we have to call in utility locates, and most of the time they get it right. Now, of course, I know y'all had a big incident up in Chattanooga where lines were not marked right, and they got into a gas line. And we've had similar occurrences here, although they weren't as severe. But we have to have at least 72 hours to allow the utilities, unless it's at a major break, an emergency. And then we call in an emergency locate, and then we stand by, wait for them to locate the lines, and then we start work. But
And that's the 811 system, right?
That's
call before you
call
dig.
before you dig.
Yeah,
And
even
that
the
applies
utilities.
even to
yeah.
homeowners, even if they're going to be putting in a fence, or they're going to be doing the excavating on their property, they need to call. It's a free call. It's a toll-free call. The utilities are members. We are a member of the Georgia Utility Protection Association, and we pay a fee. So the homeowners, residents, businesses, it doesn't cost them anything. Once they call that, all the utilities around will come mark what they have, so they know where it's at. We had a similar thing a few years ago where a guy got in building a swimming pool and got into a water line. He didn't have a utility locate.
It's very important that residents and everyone that's digging, that they call before
And
they dig.
this was in their backyard, and they didn't know that. But if we had gotten the utility request, the locate request, then we would have spotted that and flagged it, and the excavator would have known that there's a water main there, and
That's a service that's provided at no charge.
at no
the
charge
customers.
to the resident or contractors or anybody, because we, as a utility, we pay a fee to be a member of that to protect our utilities. So does Tennessee American, there's Atlanta Gas Light, North Georgia Electric, all the utility providers are
Fiber
members of that.
optics sometimes are down
Right.
there.
There's all sorts of
Yeah.
things in the ground.
A lot of things.
Underground electricity, it can be very dangerous to get in
And,
as well.
Gas and electric being underground is kind of, if you dig into a water main, you're going to get wet.
Yeah.
You hit a gas main or electric
Right.
line, you could be seriously injured.
Kevin, do you have any data or any kind of figures on what the typical water loss is for a utility company? I mean, sort of like the city of Fort Oglethorpe.
Right.
or-
Well, it varies greatly by the different utility and the age of their pipes and the type of their pipes and the quality of the construction. The American Water Works Association reference point or standard is 15%. And some utilities have a challenge with that. A lot of that can be dependent upon the pressures in the area and those kinds of things. The higher the pressures in the mountainous areas, the hilly terrains, that's some of the challenges that we have in southeast Tennessee and North Georgia, as the pressures are higher than, say, in the flatlands of Indiana. And so the higher the pressures create more leaks and those kinds of things. But leak detection is very critical for us. And we have 2 crews available that we are operating in the Tennessee American system, checking for leaks. They use geophones, it's basically a listening device that they can put on a fire hydrant, and it can listen to the sounds up and down that street on the pipe. And if you have a leak in a water pipe, it's much like a leak in a tire tube or a tire. You can hear air escaping out of a tire. With the geophones, you can hear if water is escaping out of the pipe. If there's no leak, that water will be the pipe will be quiet. And they can go to different places and listen for those leaks and pinpoint closer to where it's at. And that's a very important service. Also, there's a type of listening devices that are electronic, that are in some ways similar to the radio read collection data device, the data loggers that are on the meter that Phil showed. You can put those down in the different valve boxes and grid those out in the neighborhood or somewhere, and then leave those, and they record for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. And at night, whenever the traffic on the street is less and there's a lot less water usage, and most people are sleeping, and when the water system is much quieter, it can listen for those kinds of leaks, and then those permalogs can be pulled out of the valves and downloaded onto a laptop and look and see, and it can help isolate and grid where the leaks are and help do that. So leak detection is very important. You know, we at Tennessee American, we have a lot. Our electricity bill is very high. As we've talked a lot about the topography of the Chattanooga area, we're always moving water up and over, around, over ridges, hills, mountains, and up and down. I don't know how many times we cross Missionary Ridge, and our water bill, our electricity bill is only second highest only to our manpower budgets. And so any water that we've treated, and then it leaks out in the pipe, we have to pay the electricity to treat that water and to move it through the system. We have to pay the chemicals for the process chemistry to treat that water. So it's very important that we don't spend money treating water that gets lost and not get to the customer. And so it's important to us to manage our costs and manage the cost of our bill to the customer, that we try to minimize leaks in our system.
For the what should the public do if they suspect they see a leak somewhere? Should they just call Tennessee American?
They should. There's our customer service line, the 1-800 number. You know, it's available to be called. Many people will report it to the local police department or fire department, and those people have our numbers, and they'll call and help us. And you know, and the public's eyes are very important to us to be out and report leaks that they see.
So if they see a leak and they think it may be insignificant, it's better just to call.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because one of the things that's happened, I know Phil can attest to this, sometimes you'll have a leak in the street and you'll go out there, and if it's a reinforced concrete street full of rebar and 15, 16 inches deep, it may not look like that much of a leak. But then whenever you get through the concrete, there's a whole lot more water there than's coming up. It may be going out to the side and finding a rock crevice underground. It may not be surfacing.
Path of least resistance.
It'll be finding the path of least resistance. And so what on the surface may not be a very big leak, when you get into it, it can be a fairly large leak, and it's going somewhere else underground.
I know we experienced that here at City Hall one time. If you would you expand on that, Phil?
When they were building the new road around City Hall down here, the Stewart extension, contractor, Tally Construction, scratched up the ground, digging down, and water surfaced. And so they took a sample, and we went down there and sampled it, and it had chlorine in it. So we knew it was potable water from somewhere. So we began a search, and we just about dug up all the ground around City Hall, trying to find. We had people come out with leak detectors and listening, and nothing. We couldn't find anything. And we just about give up on it, and one day we got a call. We had a busted water main up here on Eaton Circle, which is probably a quarter mile from where the leak was surfacing. And once we fixed this leak up here on Eaton Circle, the leak down here by City Hall dried up. And what it was doing, it was just running a gravel line of a sewer line and just running the subsurface rock underneath, staying underground and surfacing. It wasn't even surfacing. It was leaching out into the creek down here until Tally took the top of the ground off, and then it created a new least resistant point for it to surface.
Wow.
We had an event like that a couple months ago during the polar vortex, and we were out. We had a lot of crews out looking for leaks, and so we were sending them out to the kind of the remote areas to look. And there was a water main along the foot of Lookout Mountain that was several hundred yards up in the woods, and they were out there tromping through the woods on looking at this water main. And there was a leak at this particular part. The water main was actually exposed. It was going over some rock area, and it had a leak, and it was leaking probably 400 or 500 gallons a minute. It was a major leak, and it was coming down the side of Lookout Mountain about 20 or 30 feet and going behind a rock and disappearing. And it was going down into the caverns, I guess, below Rock City or Ruby Falls.
Ruby Falls, yeah.
Maybe we need to test the chlorine in Ruby Falls, you know, see if we're supplying that. But that was a major leak that would have run for no telling how long. But our crews walking those remote areas found it, and we were able to repair it. But it was just disappearing.
We found a similar leak up in the area behind the Kaufman Drive, Diane Lane area, which was part of the area that was part of the old post, supplying the water lines up toward the hospital. And it was running into a creek. It wasn't surfacing. And the reason we found it is because it was during the summer and all the creeks were dry except that one. And it was just running steady. And it was just odd because it hadn't rained. So we got to looking around and
It's a
found it.
detective.
Well, once you got to it, you could hear it.
It's kind of detective work.
It is, and it's
Yeah.
interesting being in
And
the
it-
water business. After you get in the water business and are in it, the things you start to look for. You look for the wet curb for no reason, or you look
Right.
for the water that's seeping between the seams, between the yellow lines in the road when it's not been raining for several days, and just you know, your eyes are drawn to just different things to help keep an eye out for.
I pay
for those
attention to
leaks.
locates now. I never knew what all those
All the
different
markings on it.
colors, yeah, meant.
Well, they're an indication
No.
that something's fixing to happen.
Yeah.
In closing, Daphne, do you have anything you would like to let
Well,
us
I
know,
just
or-
appreciate y'all giving us the opportunity to come out here and talk, and hope that we gave some good tips to your customers, and that they have a better appreciation of what goes on behind the scenes. There's a lot more to it, and you just kind of don't think about it because it's out of sight, and we're so blessed here because our water is abundant and it's also very reliable. But we have aging infrastructure. A lot of the pipes have been laid 1950s or even older. You mentioned the Calvary when it first opened here in Fort O. So, you know, it's just all of us being aware of what we have and taking care of what we have in our home before it gets into an expensive repair, and that's what we do with the water company and with the utilities, taking care of it before it becomes a really big problem, really more expensive. So.
Well, I want to reinforce that and say that we certainly appreciate you making yourself available here today.
Absolutely.
And especially furnishing us with this kit so the homeowner can check for leaks.
You bet.
Kevin, have you got anything you would like to
Yeah, I'd like to echo some of what Daphne said. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I want to thank the city of Fort Oglethorpe for the opportunity for us to serve them with the water. You know, we are the source of the water that's served for the city, and we're proud to serve the customers in North Georgia. We serve much of North Georgia, and thankful for the opportunity to work with you all and to serve you all, and the communications that we have with Philip, and you know, along the way. I know we're very thankful. There have been times whenever Philip's folks have called us whenever they've seen an issue with their tank and some things, and have helped us find some leaks, and I think vice versa. We've helped one another with that communication, and I appreciate the partnership we have with Philip and his group, and we really appreciate the opportunity to serve you all, and encourage folks to use water wisely. We have an abundant supply, but we want to be good stewards and take advantage of those low for lows appliances and those types of things, and also take advantage of the leak detection kits to make sure their homes are in good shape.
Phil, you got anything you'd like to say in
Well,
closing?
we have several things going on on the water side of what we do. We are looking at doing that water project up Cross Street and Patterson Avenue. Hopefully we'll be able to take it also through Edgewood subdivision and Pinewood subdivision. We've had a lot of water issues in those subdivisions. Engineering's underway on that, so hopefully we'll be able to improve the water service in that area for those residents. We've received an offer for another to apply for another GFA technical assistance grant, which we're going to apply for that. It's backed by the Georgia EPD through GFA. They will help us with some leak detection. I know we've discussed y'all doing some for us, but this is a program where if we're awarded the assistance, GFA will send a crew in, they'll send a company in, I don't know how extensive it'll be, like it was with all of our big meter testing, but they will come in and do some leak detection, and hopefully we can find some more non-surfacing leaks and get those resolved.
And we're still, as we talked earlier, committed to helping y'all with some, maybe come down once a month and spend a day with one of our crews, helping y'all in some areas
that we want to look
target,
at.
that you want us to take a look at. We'll be glad to help do that.
And so we're working on those things, just trying to, get a better handle on the water system and keep a better service.
And fortunately for us, we have a council that they're very proactive on these water and sewer issues, and fortunately we have the SPLOSH tax, which has enabled us to spend a lot of money on rehab of our water and sewer system. So that's so important, and that's the reason we've been so proactive.
And that's critical. So much of our nation, from an infrastructure standpoint, is not being kept up. And there's a report that's done by the U.S. Society of Civil Engineers that evaluates the American infrastructure, bridges, roads, sewer, waters, and they consistently give us our condition as a nation as a D or D minus, and there's just a tremendous amount of investment that's needed across the nation to support our infrastructure, and it's great that you have a council that's committed to providing that resource.
Well, Fort Oglethorpe's a relatively young town in a sense, as far as having been incorporated, and I think it was 1948. But we have a lot of old infrastructure left from Fort Oglethorpe that was built in the 1920s and 30s. So we're still dealing. I mean, we've upgraded a lot of that,
Right.
But there's.
Well, it's a steady thing. It's
There's
never
still some of it.
done.
Little by little.
It's never done.
Every once in a while we come across a water line that we're just not sure how we're going to deal it, so somebody just has to get wet.
That's part of the job.
Yeah.
So,
Again, I want to thank all of you for appearing, and you too, the audience, for viewing this program. Thank you.